So how to be a good conversationalist. So first off, we're going to talk about how to start a conversation. So generally, you could start a conversation by like giving a compliment. Hey, I like your shoes. I like your bag. Oh, hey, where you get that? Asking someone where they got something is good because it's not just a yes or no question. You know, they have to actually answer it with more than one word for the most part. It's also, you know, it's goodwill to give compliments, but the compliment does have to be genuine though. It can't just be like something you're saying just because you just want to start a conversation. It's going to be really obvious and it's going to come across as awkward and weird and even disingenuous, like the person could think you're making fun of them. Another way you could start a conversation is comment on your surroundings. This honestly is the easiest way to do it. You know, if something weird's going on in the corner, you can be like, oh, what's that about? I don't know. You can say, oh, this mural's really pretty, or it just really depends on where you are and what's going on, you know, because that's an easy commonality that you have with the other person. You're both in the same room experiencing the same thing. Now, one caveat to this, don't do that thing where you like start complaining when you're commenting on your surroundings, because then that could come across really negative, especially if the other person doesn't agree with you. And that could be kind of awkward. For example, let's say if you're like at a wedding or a dinner or something, like don't say, oh, the food sucks, because if the person doesn't agree with you, yeah. When you're in a conversation with people, I know a big problem a lot of people have is like awkward silences and they kind of don't know what to say. And the way to remedy that, be curious about people. When I talk to people in conversation, I'm very curious about them, and that's why I don't usually have awkward silences. You know, so if they're telling me something about myself, about them, or about themselves, I mean, I'm curious, like, oh, okay, what was that like? How did you feel? This and this and that. Really listen. And also, don't focus just on what you're going to say next, because then it's like it takes you out of the moment. You sound awkward and stilted. It's kind of like if you created this script in your head and the other person's not following the script. Now you're screwed because you're like kind of thrown off. Just be in the moment, listen, and genuinely be interested and curious about other people. Most people think small talk about the weather is boring. I personally don't think it's boring because, you know, I'm curious about, you know, oh, you like cold? Oh, because you grew up in Vermont? Cool, what was that like? You see, we're getting into different topics. So now we've gone from talking about the weather to talking about where you grew up. So it's not what you're talking about, it's how you talk about it. And speaking of awkward silences, don't try to fill awkward silences and don't talk just to talk. Like that's what makes an awkward silence awkward. Sometimes there are going to be pauses just because there's nothing to say, or because people are trying to think, or because the conversation just reached its natural end. Let it be, relax, let it go. If it's meant to be, you'll talk again soon. 2 things that you want to focus on when you're trying to ask questions to get to know someone better is number 1, don't be invasive. Number 2, don't treat it like an interview. Number 1, don't be invasive. Seems self-explanatory, but sometimes people don't have a good sense of like what questions are appropriate and what questions are not. I mentioned this in a couple past videos of mine, but generally you want to, of course, stay away from asking questions about taboo topics like politics, sex, religion. So asking people stuff like, how much money do you make? Off limits. Rude. Asking people very intimate questions about their relationship? Rude. Hell, even asking someone if they have a partner right off the bat, I don't recommend it. I recommend you actually kind of stay away from romantic relationships. Stay away from asking about like romantic relationships and intimate partnerships in general when you're first meeting somebody. Instead, you could ask questions like, what do you do for fun? Generally, as a rule of thumb, your questions should be centered around things like hobbies and interests, likes and dislikes. Oh, I like cheese. You don't like cheese? Oh, why not? Oh, you went out for pizza? What'd you order? What's your favorite type of pizza? Oh, pepperoni? Cool. Mine is Hawaiian. Or something like that. But the key to asking questions in a smooth way, this is what differentiates someone who's a good conversationalist to someone who comes off a little bit off and creepy. Your question should flow. Your question should integrate naturally into the conversation, and they should more so be follow-ups rather than just questions that you're asking out of the blue. What you don't want to do is just kind of go down a list of questions that you have in your head, like boom, 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 like it's an interview, because then the person's going to be like, oh, okay. Also, like it's a little off-putting. The person's gonna wonder like where all these questions are coming from out of nowhere, and it's also like it disrupts the natural give and take in a conversation. You got to think of a conversation like it's a seesaw. There's a balance between you and the other person. It can't be like one person's asking all the questions or the other person's asking all the questions. That's imbalance, and imbalanced conversations feel uncomfortable. I'll give you an example of a naturally integrated question. There was a time that I worked as a software trainer. I was training somebody, and they mentioned how like they couldn't wait to get back into the office because we were working remotely because of COVID and everything. And so I happened to ask him, "Oh, are you an extrovert?" Because usually, a lot of the times, it's the extroverts that they like the idea of being in the office because they need to be around people a lot more than introverts do. So that was a natural follow-up question that came from genuine curiosity that I had. And so then he goes, "Oh yeah, I actually am an extrovert." And then we start talking about extroversion versus introversion, return to office versus working from home. Team work from home all day, every day. But point is, we had a great conversation within 5 minutes of meeting each other. So a lot of it is just how you ask the questions. Let your curiosity lead. Like if someone is saying something and you're paying attention, you should naturally be curious about it and ask them some questions in order to get to know more. It's just you want to keep in mind that the question is not invasive, leading back to what I said before. So when a question pops into your head, do a little check in your head. Be like, wait a minute, okay, is this an off-limits topic? Could this make them uncomfortable? How would I feel if I was asked that question? Do I have the type of relationship with them to be asking stuff like this? And then go from there. So when you first meet people, you can joke with them, but you have to keep these rules in mind. So rule number 1, do not joke about dark topics. You keep it light. Do not joke about topics that would be a bummer at a party. This is not the time for dark humor. Number 2, do not make jokes that would be controversial. So no talk about, off-limits topics like sex, politics, money, any of the taboo topics. They're off-limits for a joke. Also, do not make any jokes about any demographics. It's offensive, plain and simple. A good way to joke without crossing the line is to joke about your surroundings. Joke about what's going on around you. Let's say, fake scenario, you're at a store with somebody and the lights randomly go off. And you joke and say something like, "They kicking us out?" Or let's say you're trying to open a bottle or something and the bottle just will not open no matter what you do. And maybe you say something like, "Damn, this bottle must want me to go to hell." Those are examples, but the point is you can be witty without offending somebody. And joking about your surroundings is a good way to do that. A good thing to practice is if you're going to joke at all, gauge the other person. What is their sense of humor like? Are they quick to crack jokes? Are they pretty serious? And do they not really crack many jokes at all? Do they laugh at other people's jokes easily? And what kind of jokes do they laugh at? Try to take note of that kind of stuff before you just launch in with your own jokes, because everyone has their own sense of humor and some people's senses of humor are not compatible. You should also keep in mind how old they are, because if this person's, let's say, old enough to be your parent, they might not appreciate certain jokes from you just because they might feel like you're younger than them and it's inappropriate for you to be talking to them like that. Now, personally, I don't believe in the whole, people automatically deserve respect just because they're older than you. But in general, society frowns upon being crass or like cursing around people who are significantly older than you. So it's social norms, and you have to keep that in mind. You also have to keep in mind gender. If you're a man and they're a woman, there are certain things you want to be careful not to say because you don't want to be perceived as flirting, in case that's not welcome. All in all, it comes down to reading the room and knowing your audience. Now, if you want to veer into being playfully mean, like I said, it takes a lot of social finesse, but this is one way you could pull it off. You give a very aggressive sounding compliment. So an example could be like, let's say your friend or this person is an artist and they're criticizing something they painted, and you look at it and you go, rags on themselves while they paint like Vincent van Gogh. Okay, all right. If you say it like that, like you're being funny, you're being witty, but you're making it clear it's a compliment. So there is no way that someone could take that as like, "Oh, you're disrespecting me and you don't know me like that." But that's all in the delivery. You don't want to be too deadpan about it, because then the person could think that you're being mocking. Okay, so it's all in tone and delivery. So if you're not confident about that kind of joke, I don't recommend doing it. One of the biggest parts of being a good conversationalist is recognizing when the other person is done with the conversation. A big mistake I see people making in social situations is that they're in a conversation, right? And they're so wrapped up in the conversation and what they want to say that they're not recognizing any of the person's cues that they're giving that they want to stop talking for now. And if you do that enough times, the other person could be feeling like, oh my God, I never want to get trapped into a conversation with this person again. Listen again, keyword, trapped. That's how they're going to feel. And the thing is, people aren't going to tell you directly that they don't want to talk to you anymore, because most people, they don't want to come off as rude, and they feel like cutting you off abruptly would be rude. So here are the social cues they'll give instead. Number one, they'll start backing away. If you're standing talking to someone and you see them start to back away, wrap it up. Number two, their responses will get shorter. If you notice that their sentences are becoming shorter, there's a lot of right, and they're no longer really adding to the conversation, wrap it up. If they start mentioning stuff they gotta do, that's supposed to be a cue that they're ready to stop talking. Now they're trying to slowly transition out of the conversation. They're trying to slowly transition into a goodbye. If they say these key phrases like, all right, well, what time is it? It's time to wrap it up. Knowing when to leave is such an underrated skill. If you're able to follow these cues and the person you're talking to sees that you can understand these social cues, they're going to breathe a sigh of relief inside. They're going to be like, okay, this person gets the hints. I don't have to worry about them the next time I run into them. If not, like I said, you might find that people start avoiding you, or that people start being very brief with you to begin with. I know personally for myself, I've known people like neighbors, places that I go to frequently that are very nice, but they're very long-winded. And at some point, I started avoiding them because I knew that if we stopped and got to talking, I would be standing there for like 30 minutes and I didn't have time. And sometimes I just didn't want to. So don't hold your conversational partner hostage. And for those that want to dive deeper, I do one-on-one coaching sessions. So click the LINK in my bio and book a call.